welcome to the show. The first thing I want to tell you is, in that introductory press conference, it was really insightful and entertaining. You were very candid. You said something that made me write it down. You said that we're talking about a 1-degree change here. What did that mean?
Well, you come into a team like this, you guys know it's, 3 years, top 4. That's hard to do. It's hard to do in this league. For me, a big thing is just that 1 degree meant how are we going to bounce this thing 1 degree? How are we going to get 1 degree better? And for me, I think it's you're not going to come in here and do it system wise. I don't have any magic system here that's going to come in and get you, from 106 points to 126 points. But can we up the physicality of our, and when I say physicality, I'm not talking body checking, but just in our battle level, in our hand-to-hand combat, in our stick battles, in our finishing checks, playing in people's gear, playing into people's hands, getting to the net. I'm talking about that overall hand-to-hand body rub contact. Can we up that 1 degree through 82 so that we're even better prepared and we can take it a little further come game 83 and beyond. So I'm not looking for, we're not going to change the style so much, but certainly we're going to ask guys to, have a 1 degree mentality change. And the last thing I'll say with that is just that, in this league, you guys have been around the league, that wherever you put your energy is where you kind of get your pop. So that's what we're going to try to, where we're going to try to put our energy.
Glenn, makes great sense as a theme. It really does, because you're talking about a roster that's really been on the cusp for those 3 years that you referenced. So we love the hire, we love the fit. It goes both ways. The most interesting part of it, though, is that it's really rather uncommon for our sport. Coaches don't repeat. Head coaches don't repeat in the same spot. And you were there, of course, back in the early 2010s. Please do this. You certainly worked for Jim Nill way back in the day. Can you take us inside the conversation? I'm really intrigued by that, and be as specific as you can be. What did the conversation sound like between you and Jim as you're discussing the mutual fit here for a second tour of duty for you?
Yeah, so I will roll you back to 2011 and give you the bit of the history so that the conversations have some context. So, Jim, I was here with Joe Nieuwendyk when the Dallas Stars were owned by the league, and not many people realize that. The Dallas Stars were owned by the National Hockey League until Tom Gullardi came and bought them in 2012. So there was like a 2-year period there. And so I was working with Joe Nieuwendyk here, and at the end of my second year, my contract was up, and Jim Nill replaced Joe, I think in April or the beginning of May that year, at some point. And then Jim and I actually met for a 2-week period, and he was deciding whether he's going to renew me or not, or he's going to let me go. But and I alluded to this in the press conference. So we had good conversations for 2 weeks. I walked in, he said, "Come in Tuesday, I'll decide if I'm getting you a new contract or I'm going to let you go." He brought me in on Tuesday and he let me go. So at the end of the day, I ended up going to Vancouver, but we always kept dialogue. Even when I'd see him, I'd come back to Dallas, we'd chat. Even Tom Gullardi, the owner, him and he was in Vancouver. I spent 3 years there. We had boys the same age that played hockey together. So the dialogue was already there. And now fast forward 12 years, you fast forward, apparently I never had an inkling that I would be, when Pete left, that I would be a guy they would consider. But when I started hearing my name, obviously I was excited, but the conversations now between me and Jim, I think the first time I walked into that office, I was thinking to myself for the interview, I was like, this is the office he let me go in. So it had a little bit of
ominous environment.
Great story.
Yeah. Well, hey, Coach, congrats. And I'm with these guys. I think it's a great fit. I think it's just you're walking into a really good place, but they're also getting a really good coach in there that's going to be able to help them make that next step. My thing as a coach is I always obviously learn from the experiences that you go through and the coaches that you coach with that help you out so much and think in different ways. But one of the fascinating things for me was being able to coach a Crosby and a Datsuk and Sakic and Forsberg, and I learned so much from them. You just had two of the greatest players maybe ever in Draisaitl and McDavid. Are there things that you learned as a coach that you might not have learned from other players or different experiences?
Oh, you're totally right on, Tone. You're totally right on, for sure. You know those guys, they have such elite minds. They have elite minds, and you've got to work with them. It's got to be a bit of a collaboration, but they also want to be coached. The top players want to be coached, especially this generation. They want to be coached, and it makes you better because you got to be right. You got to be right. You got to have some value. You got to add value to their game. So those types of players, Leon and Connor especially, they more than they know, they grew me probably more than I grew them. And like any other coaching job, it's like this. You got to get some scars on. I was only 2 years removed from basically coaching in the East Coast Hockey League when I got the Dallas job in 11. These past 12 years working with players like Connor, Leon, the Sedins, and then coaches John Tortorella, Mike Sullivan. The list goes on. Kenny Hitchcock, Dave Tippett. The list goes on and on. You just start to get some wounds and some scars that helps prepare you for this type of job.
I got a little follow-up on that now that I think about it. Now, for you to get to the finals and win a Stanley Cup, those two guys are going to be right in your way. Now you got to turn the clock around and say, okay, what did I learn from them that I'm going to be able to tell my players when we play against them? I don't want you to share those secrets, but have you thought about that? Like, Edmonton's the team we got to beat. I got to add something to my team to make sure we're ready for when we do face Edmonton?
Yeah, there are some thoughts certainly against them with a lot of the conversations, but Final Four 2 years in a row against the same team, obviously at Dallas, you get to know each other pretty good. I know those young men. Obviously I'll give you the easy one. You kind of got to really stop their power play. Try to keep the 5-on-5 as tight as you can. Because they're just so lethal there. They're just so creative. They've been together for such a long time that they can just do things out of instinct, and those are the most dangerous players when they're on instinct playing, and these guys are.
We've talked a little bit around it, Glenn, but if you could just really, I know a huge part of the appeal for you had to have been just the character, the depth of this roster. What are the elements that you see in the Dallas Stars that ultimately make this your third head coaching stop in the NHL?
Yeah, I said this story just the other day, and I'll say it again. Obviously, lots of us talk about in this league, it starts from the back end and out and goaltending and up the middle. So it's almost like a volcano. So I love the depth up the middle. With our centermen, obviously we have some real studs on defense with some good young players coming, with the Harley and Heiskanen and Lindell and then this young group and up the middle, certainly. And then we have skill on the wings. Obviously they acquired Rance and you've got some good veteran leadership in Ben and Seguin. And so obviously, and then the goaltending is solid. Both DeSmith and Ott, were real solid goalies. So I remember walking down that tunnel in LA, and I know both of you guys know it. I was walking down that tunnel in 2000 and maybe 14 or 15, I forget which year, and I was with Daryl Sutter, and he got Carter and maybe Richards back, or Carter and Kopitar back, and we met, and we were walking down that tunnel, and he goes, well, it's good to get the centers back. I said, Daryl, and he goes, yeah, it's all D and centers and goalies in this league. You and I can play the wings. So I'm really happy that, that we have some skill on the wings, obviously, but we're built like that volcano up the middle with our D and goaltending.
This ex-winger is not offended by your remarks. Not offended by your remarks.
Nor am I.
We wish you all the best. Great stuff in your presser, and it's easy to see why they made this choice. Good luck to you.
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah, thanks, guys.